If you can't name it, you can't find it. If you can't find it, you can't observe it. If you can't observe it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't understand it. If you can't understand it, you can't report it. If you can't report it, you can't find its purpose. The Fair Data Initiative had its roots in 2015 with the G7, or the Group of Seven Summit, and a very quick follow-up by several global life sciences organizations, which led to a biopharma industry initiative in 2017 by the Pistoia Alliance. The basic data issues show up in the naming bucket, as seen, for fair data: taxonomy, ontology, vocabularies, and the digital objects that build them: RDF, XML, NLP, and graphs, with a laser focus on the metadata. Finding data requires good identity resolution, the provenance and ownership of data sets, devices, and hardware, along with their operating systems and applications that touch them. Only then can you observe the data in the translation and transfer process, the access and audit logs, and understand the various databases, lab notebooks, data warehouses, and data lakes. Measurement requires a good data management platform, or DMP, which will help in conducting fair data assessments, gap and overlap analyses that are the foundation of good clinical study design. Interoperability and management frameworks drive understanding of community standards like SNOMED CT, ICD-11, LOINC, OMOP, FHIR, FHIR, CDISC, RX norm, among many others. Finally, reporting is the central pillar for governance and regulatory compliance, or GRC, via international efforts like GoFair, EMDS, ARDC, NIH Data Commons, HDR UK, to name a few. The healthcare and cybersecurity industry needs to take a very close look at fair data. Continuous clinical study is just at the horizon. About the same time that the FAIR data model was being created and conceived, the FAIR Institute was established in 2016. Its goal has always been risk management with a business focus. From a naming perspective, the FAIR risk model is complementary to models from NIST, ISO, Octave, and ISACA. The ultimate goal for naming is to harmonize data in a data fabric with the cybersecurity and risk fabric together. The basics for the find segment are obvious: assets, threats, vulnerability, and their identification with proper labeling and tagging to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or CIA. The causal part needs to be the observations and recording of threat and loss frequencies with a vulnerability metric. These measurements lead to loss and cost of loss estimates for products, response, replacement, opportunity, brands, and fines. One needs to understand not only the domain for the risk model for which it's being built, but also the assumptions made. Your model is only as good as your assumptions. The sources of data and a good understanding of the confusion matrix, which include accuracy, precision, false positives, and false negatives. The reporting process and adaptive validation of risk and trust models is crucial for insurance purposes, as well as decisions that are conveyed by the management team to board, to employees, to government agencies, and finally to the public. I attached a use case. It doesn't look simple, pardon the complexity here, but the God's in the details. The use case attached is for data breaches and their costs for a specific reason. And the reason is modeling ain't easy. This model that's attached has about 25 variables, 5 functions, and 4 outputs. There were some very scary numbers for data breaches in 2021, as reported by IBM and the Ponemon Institute. Data breaches in the healthcare industry were the highest in terms of expense, at an average of about $9.2 million, followed by the financial industry, which was about $5.7 million, and finally pharmaceutical industry, which was about $5 million. Note that the various risk models overestimate per breach cost in all industries, except healthcare and pharma, where they actually underestimate the costs. By the way, I should mention that it took about 287 days on average to detect and contain a breach in 2020, when ransomware was the highest. So I had to put George Box in here. And the question has always been, how reliable are these models? I wouldn't be as dramatic as George Box, as his quote is shown here, but there is definitely a causality chasm between understanding and trust. There are many ways to address this, but there needs to be a happy medium between data and security hygiene, the regulatory agencies, and the headline happy media touting earth-shattering daily breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. In the real world, it is about data, and it's about security and their hygiene. Thank you for stopping by and watching the 3rd episode of 21 in 21.